This is the cab of the Combine, Command Central. Right here you see this P on here stands for the parking brake. Right now you can see it's applied. To release the parking brake, you just take your foot and push down on the release. That automatically releases it. To apply it, just push down till it firmly into place and it locks into place. Anytime you leave the machine to go work on it or to break for a meal, anytime you get out of the cab, you want to have the parking brake on. This is a hydrostat with a 3-gear transmission, and so if you're on any kind of a slope, this Combine will and does roll away. So you want to make sure the parking brake is engaged. Likewise, when you get back in the machine, the first thing you want to do is to take the parking brake off. So it's kind of the first and the last thing you do. So as soon as you get ready to leave the machine, you push it on. As soon as you get back in the machine and you're ready to go again, take it off. While we're on the floor, this here is the pedal to release your steering wheel. You just step down on it, pull the steering wheel down to the desired position. To also further adjust the steering wheel, you can take the John Deere symbol, turn it counterclockwise, and grab the steering wheel, and it will extend. So as far as you like, whatever's comfortable. To reverse, just loosen it, slide it in, and then tighten it up wherever you like. These pedals on the right side are your brake. This is your left brake, this is your right brake. They're separate because if you're turning in the field, you want to be able to, sometimes if you need to get just a little bit tighter turning radius, or if it's in somewhat muddy or really hilly conditions and you need to turn sharper. If I was to turn to the left and I'd want to really turn sharp, I would obviously crank the wheel all the way to the left and at the same time put a little pressure on the left brake. That will lock it up and allow all the power to go to the right wheels to assist in turning. Likewise, to turn to the right, you press on the right pedal a little while turning fully with the steering wheel. Anytime you're going down the road or you need to stop, you want to be very cognizant of the fact of putting your foot on both brakes. So you just kind of cover them, both brakes, because if you happen to just grab one, it has the potential to spin you right in the ditch or right into oncoming traffic. So you want to be very careful to make sure you use both brakes. As you notice, there is no clutch. This is a hydrostatic machine with 3 gears. Your gear selector is on the right. As you'll notice there on the bottom, it has first, neutral, second, and third. This here is your hydrostat. If you take it out of the neutral position, again, this position here is not park. The machine will and does roll in this position. This is just neutral. It's not putting hydraulic pressure to go forward, and it's not putting hydraulic pressure to go in reverse. You have to rely on the parking brake to hold the machine anytime you get out of the cab. To go forward, you just take the hydrostatic lever, and after making sure no one's around, everything's clear to move, all shields are out of the way, you start pushing it forward. To shift gears, first is used for putting the head on, detaching the head, climbing really steep driveways, anytime you need a very low torque, high power situation. But the trade-off is it's very slow speed. First gear will take you from 0 to about 5 miles an hour. Second gear will take you from 0 all the way up to about 9 miles an hour. And third gear, depending on your tire size, will take you from 0, of course, all the way up to about 23 miles an hour. Now you can obviously start in third gear, but you want to be on the road because the torque is so much that in a soft field condition or really muddy roads, you're going to want to stay in second because it's just so hard on the hydrostatic motor to be in third gear. To shift gears, the easiest way, obviously there's no clutch. Instead of fighting with this shifter because it's a lot of torque, the easiest thing to do is making sure no one's in the way. Everyone's clear. You go ahead and take one hand on the hydrostat, get it moving just a little bit, and at the same time you pull back on the hydrostat, you slide the, I'll do it again. At the same time your hand's on the hydrostat, you pull back and you slide the gear shifter ahead. Now you're in second. To do it again in third, make sure nobody's around. Push a little on the hydrostat, and as soon as you let off at the same time, push it on in, and now we're into third. So you can see how the handle traveled from up here all the way down to here as indicated 1 through 3. On the steering column, you're going to notice there's these buttons. This button is for ether, for cold weather starting. Don't use it unless it's bitter cold. Otherwise, it should start on its own. This here is your horn button, and then over here on the right is the key. On the steering column here, you'll also know this lever. This lever has 2 purposes. When you're going down the road and you have your flashers on, This lever then turns into a blinker indicator, just like a turn signal on a vehicle or a semi. You can see the lights lit up for turning left, go back to neutral, they're both off, just go back to flashing, and then to turn right, you turn it all the way up. And they are not self-canceling. Once you're done with the turn, just like a semi, you will have to return them back to the neutral position. When the hazard lights are off and you're in the field, this lever here dictates which light is on the side of the combine. Each side of the combine has a light. That light is what they call a row finder light or an unload light. Right now it's signified that the left light is on. So it would help in the nighttime for unloading grain on the go or unloading at the truck. And then the right side is to help you also to find rows. When you're going down the end rows and you want to try to find your planter row, in particular on corn, or if you're trying to find a certain row that goes into a waterway, you can use that light to help find it on the end. As we mentioned earlier, this is a hydrostat, so obviously to go forward, you move the lever forward, and that'll in turn turn your speed on, and the farther you push it ahead, the faster you're going to go. To stop, you just pull back into the neutral position, and it comes to a stop. To back up, do the same. And the farther you pull back on the handle, the faster the machine's going to go. Again, to stop, back to neutral, that's your neutral position. Remember, it does not have park, it will roll away. The other functions on this command arm control, this here is your detents. When you're harvesting, you'll hit number 1 when you get to the end of the row. That'll automatically pick the head up, and you can pay attention to turning and doing everything else. Number 2 will drop the head down to a preset position, usually a little bit higher. And then number 3 puts the head all the way on the ground. You'd use number 2 if you're dealing with a lot of rocks or terraces. You want to keep the edges of the head from digging in and getting torn off. And then number 3 is usually your detent position for almost all of your harvesting. That's with the head set at the desired pressure on the ground. To reverse, just hit number 1 and it picks right up and you're ready to turn around on the end. If a person's going through the field and all of a sudden a person runs out in front of them while you're harvesting, or there's a large rock, or there's some other thing that you need to stop the head immediately, they have an emergency button on top that automatically stops the head. Instead of having to try to remember to reach down here and grab the right button, you hit this top button, it will shut the head off and stop your harvesting. The other buttons on the hydrostat control, this here raises the bean head reel. When you push up, as you can see, the reel is going all the way up. And then likewise, push down, and it goes all the way down. Usually you're going to want to run it somewhere in the middle, a couple inches up, depending. When you're in tall beans, you're going to want to go, fairly high. When you're in real short beans, you're going to want to come down. The same for other small grains. You just got to try to find that happy medium. Ideally, you want those fingers to come in and pull the crop across the sickle blades and then into the auger, but you don't want them so low that you're knocking excess beans out of the pod or excess wheat kernels, barley kernels out of the head. On the other hand, if you raise it too high, you're not going to be able to hold the commodity up against the reel and keep it all feeding nice. So if you're looking across as you're going through the field and you're seeing a whole bunch of piles, or it's just not feeding very smooth and the machine is kind of surging and it just isn't a real smooth operation, you probably want to lower the reel a little bit farther to get it a little bit closer to the auger. If in turn you're digging way in deep into the grain, you're probably knocking off more kernels than you have to, so you want to kind of have it in that sweet happy medium depending on the height of the crop. This button also to the side is your fore and aft. As you can see, the reel is going fore, and then to the right is aft, coming back closer. And again, it's the same concept. You want to try to have a happy medium between obviously way out here where it's not really doing any good and the plants are falling back down into the sickle area and getting cut 2-3 times and causing up balling against the reel. But you probably, on the other hand, don't want to have it all the way tight where you're having excess shelling and head loss at the head. So again, it's just a happy medium. This here manually raises or lowers the head. This, obviously we talked 1, 2, 3, does it automatically while the machine is engaged, but to manually raise it and lower it, and also to connect to the heads on the throat, up and down. And then the side button is your contour master. If you take it to the right side of the combine goes down. As you can see, the head is adjusting sideways. If you take it to the left side of the head goes closer to the ground. So this would be what we call contour master, so anytime you're working on uneven terrain. Now I'll show you how to set this up. Most of the time, the only time you're going to use this is if you're going down the road and you're trying to avoid a mailbox, or you're trying to avoid turning into a driveway that's at a funny angle. Then you will manually adjust this to keep the corners of the head from digging into the ground if you choose to keep the head on for very, very, very short moves. So most of the time all this is taken care of by hitting the default 2 or 3 button, and the contour master automatically adjusts. To make sure the head is even or in the center, you go ahead and look down through the glass. You can see that black skirt on the top edge of the throat, and you can see that little cutout. Right now the cutout is right on the left. It's kind of filled with corn right now and debris, but now you go, it's to the right. And so you ideally want to get it to about right there in the center. Now you know the head is level. The final 2 things on the hydrostatic arm control is your auger. You can see the icon right on here, self-explanatory. If you push and hold on the icon for the out button, the auger swings out and into place, and now you're ready to unload straight out where you can see it easy. To fold in, hit the bottom of the button and the auger goes down. Now it has a default position, just like an automatic window on your vehicle. If I hit this button once all the way and let go, the auger comes all the way out and will stop at the fully extended up position. And the same thing, if I hit the bottom of the button and then let go, after I hit the detent position, it automatically folds in by itself, and it will not stop until it gets all the way into the in and locked cradle position. But if I accidentally tap this button, it's going to stop. So one has to be very careful when they fold the auger in to take a look in the mirror and make sure that it indeed folded all the way in. If you accidentally get button happy and start knocking buttons on here, it will stop. The last button on the hydrostatic control is this yellow button. This is your on-off for your unload auger. When you are ready to unload on the end by a truck or under the grain cart, push the button, it'll beep at you, the light will come on, and after a few seconds it will engage. You can now hear it engaged and unloading. When you're ready to when you're finished unloading, you're ready to shut it off, hit the yellow button again, and the light goes off and the unload auger stops. The 2 big yellow buttons here are the engage and disengage for the machine and the head. The right button engages the entire machine, it's engaged, and the left button engages the head. These buttons here, you have to push down and then ahead, and then you just flip them back. So they got a safety to come back, but to put them in, you've got to engage by pushing them in. Now, if you're going along and it's plugged and you need to stop the head, just pull back on this button and hold it in reverse. The head will stop, and now we'll disengage, or now we'll reverse. The head will stop and reverse and spit out the product. There we go. Now it's reversing the head. Okay. This button here, this black button on the command arm, this locks all your hydraulics. So if you're going down the road and you don't want to accidentally unfold the auger or put the throat on the ground or do anything, you just hold this button down for a second. Road transport mode activated. Now to deactivate, you hold the same switch down for 2 seconds. Now it deactivates. Now you have the ability to raise and lower the head and all your hydraulics. Once it's on, you can do anything you want, and it's not going to react because it's locked. These 3 soft keys is your throttle. You have 3 detent positions. Turtle runs at about 1200 RPM. Medium runs at about 1700 RPM. And then full throttle is going to put you up in that 23 to 2400 range. Those are your 3 options. There's no in between. You've got your 3 modes. Whenever you're harvesting, you want to make absolute certainty that you are at full throttle. When you engage the machine, you want to make sure you're at idle. You do not want to engage the machine at medium or high. You're going to cause a lot more wear and tear than necessary and potentially damage the machine. So you want to engage the entire machine in turtle. So like here, we'll engage the machine in turtle and then go immediately to full speed. Now your RPMs go way up and you're ready to harvest. If a person harvests in the medium range, you run a very, very serious risk of plugging the machine. There's just enough horsepower and torque to get the machine full, but not enough to carry it through. So make very, very sure that you put it on full throttle before you harvest. This here is your float position. This determines how much pressure on a flex head there is. And you can adjust that by pressing the button. Once you push the button, you go up to the HydroFlex pressure, and then you can adjust the pressure, either less or more, by adjusting on this dial. This wheel here, whenever it's highlighted on the command center, will adjust whatever it is you want to adjust. You can turn it up or down. This soft key here has 4 options. If you hit it, you can toggle through them. First one's manual raise and lower speed, then the header height sensitivity, the feeder house tilt sensitivity, and your manual raise lower speed. Any one of these, again, you grab the dial wheel and you can automatically dial it up or back, however sensitive you as an operator choose. The next soft key here is your threshing clearance. This here is the amount of clearance you have between the rotor and the grate at the bottom of the threshing portion of the rotor. Again, press the soft key and select your number of clearance. This is again just a reference number. You'll refer to your sheet as to where to put it. If you have a draper head, you can adjust the speed by pressing the soft key and adjust. This soft key is your rotor speed or threshing speed. This is how many RPM that the rotor is spinning at. In first gear, it's between 230 and 550. On second gear, you can be between 420 RPM and 1,000. So again, you can adjust that. But once you reach the minimum or the maximum for that particular gear, you're going to have to go back behind the machine under the gull wing and adjust from first to second gear. This soft key with the sieve or the chafer on top indicates the chafer indication. If you set that, you can adjust your shoe on the chafer position. And this is approximately the amount of millimeters in between the gangs of chafers from all the way shut to all the way open. And that's how many millimeters. The next soft key is the sieve, which is under the chafer. It's indicated by the lower diagonal cut lines, and you can adjust that position, plus or minus, again, millimeters. This is your fan speed. Press that, and then you can adjust your fan speed. These dedicated wheels, this is your automatic header control, so it will automatically adjust your header height as you turn it to the plus or the minus. And that is what you use to set your 1, 2, and 3 detent positions. Once you click on like 1, then you select plus or minus for how high you want the number 1 detent to put your head at. Number 3, hit number 3. Hit number 3, and the detent will come up at the top right screen, and then you can adjust your header height however high or low you would like. Again, for number 1, it'll be displayed up here, and you can again adjust how high or low you want that detent position to be. This dial of speed is for your reel speed, and you can adjust the ratio of how fast the reel turns. The reel has an automatic sensor on how fast you are going, and it adjusts the speed so that it is a ratio of how fast you are going to how fast the reel itself turns. So it's not dedicated. In other words, when you're just getting started at the end and you're not moving very fast, the reel slows down. If you're harvesting at let's say a 5 or 6 mile an hour speed, the reel will automatically speed up to make it just a certain ratio faster than your ground speed. And that's whatever you set it at, plus or minus, is how fast the reel is going to turn in that ratio. The green soft keys toggle you around in the command center. So all 4 of these just toggle you around. You hit the check mark and it's going to enter whatever is highlighted. There I have home 2 of 2. I hit the check mark and now it goes home 1 of 2. If I want to move over to the harvest monitor, I hit this soft key up top. That selects harvesting monitor, and now it's one of two. If I hit the check mark, it's going to take me to wherever is highlighted. Here I've got my combine setup, and then your diagnostic and calibration. Each of these soft keys. This here will take you to the main menu on this soft key here, and then you can toggle through the many options on the main menu. This X key will back up. So like if I go to the menu and I want to go back, I can hit the X key and it will take me back one step. This is your adjustment guide for the machine. A very, very helpful tool. If we were to harvest, let's say we're going to go over to soybeans. Slide the middle section out, and you'll notice on the top, the crops and the green dot. Slide the green dot till it's right below whichever commodity you're harvesting. Soybeans, green dot. Then here, you look, you've got your feed accelerator, wear strips, serrated, concaves, round bar, and separators install as required. Generally, you're not going to have to worry about these three up top. What you're really looking at is these down here. Your feeder house conveyor change speeds to 26 tooth. Nearly everything we harvest is going to run under a 26 tooth, so this one is not very pertinent. That is located right down there. You've got a 32 and a 26 inch. It's right on the right side of the throat if you'd have to adjust it. Your feed accelerator is low and high. Low is for like seed soybeans, high for others. So generally you're just using normal soybeans, you're going to be in high. It would only be for seed beans, which is very unlikely. Your threshing speed range, that's your rotor speed. So since it's 450 to 650, you're probably going to want to be in the number 2 gear ratio. If you can run in both, it is better to be in the lower gear at the high end than the high gear or number 2 gear and be at the very, very low end of 2. It's much better to be in the high end of 1, but you may have to adjust. The cleaning fan speed range, that's your fan soft key. You can adjust between 8 and 950. Yeah, and this here is for 9870. Nearly all of ours are 9770s. Your concave clearance, that's the amount of space between the rotor and the bottom of the concave, 15 to 25. Your chafer clearance is again a millimeter, 14 to 18. Sieve, 6 to 9. And your feeder house drum height, which is down on the throat, is in the down position. So you have each of the different commodities. They have all the different references right here. So it's a very, very good tool to tell you where you're at. Then on the back there's a flow chart. Kind of tells you different troubleshooting stuff, and you can go through that as necessary to deal with dirty grain or not all the way shelled kernels left in the field, and you can just kind of go through it. Usually it's located in the armrest, sometimes it's in the owner's manual pocket, but make sure you find it and have one on your crew. This top screen here lets the person know what's happening with the head and the throat assembly. This smiley face here with the soft key indicates that the automatic contour master is engaged. This soft key here indicates your flex, and it indicates how much pressure. And when this sign here with the little squiggly undulating ground with the head indicates that it's automatic. So it will automatically adjust on the ground to give you the optimal performance within the settings you've selected. This little icon here is an indication of the throat, which automatically moves when you hit the detent number 3 or number 2. It will automatically take over and keep you at just the right height automatically as you're going through the field. So you can select any one of these soft keys to do any of the automatic features by pressing on them, and once they light up on the screen, then you know that it's in auto mode. This line here is just a reference to how high your head is, high or low. And this number is also a reference number to this bar graph. This next screen is your loss monitor screen. The top, this is an icon of your tailings or of a return. This is how much is going over both the chafer and the sieve. Anything that makes it over the sieve goes into the return auger and then up into the top of the concave via the elevator for the return. So ideally you want to have just a couple bars lit up on the right side here. If you're starting to get 3/4 to almost full, you probably got one of the settings wrong. Too tight on the sieve would be probably my first guess. You want to have a little bit going back, but you don't want to have too much. And these bars will light up when you're harvesting, starting from the right, and work their way till it's completely full with a bar graph. This right, this is that sensor that was at the rear of the rotor. This is how many kernels are hitting that sensor. So as these bars, they start at the bottom and they work their way all the way up. You want to see this at a very low level. That indicates that you're having most of your threshing and clean out taking place at the beginning and mid portion of the rotor. If this is getting up high, you probably have some settings wrong and you're sending too much grain over the back of the machine. This icon here is how much is going over the chafer, and once it goes over the chafer, it's gone. So as this continues again to grow from the bottom up, you want to ideally keep these two on the edges very low. This middle one is a combination and a couple other factors all added into one. This is the one you probably watch the most, and this again starts at the bottom and works the bars all the way up. Optimal efficiency is bars between these two green permanent lines. You're getting the most out of the machine and you're not running too much over. If you're way down here, just a couple bars, you can probably go a lot faster and get a lot more efficiency and production done. If you have bars that are way up near the top, you are indeed running grain over the back and you're not collecting all the grain. So you ideally want to run it somewhere in the middle. These soft keys here adjust the value. So you want to be very careful, because if you hit the calibrate and then adjust the value, you can adjust these so they're at 0 while you're running all kinds of product over. Likewise, you can be almost running no product over and adjust them so they're all way too high. So it's not, until you get to know the machine, I would not adjust these and just kind of take a look behind you on the ground and check how much is actually going through the machine. This lowest of the screen, this is obviously your fuel gauge. The fuel gauge, if it gets down to this last tick mark where it's got the red, you have approximately 1 hour. I would not push it. These are an absolute pig to prime and get going. So I would make sure you keep your fuel, and in doubt, get fueled up. I would advise fueling every day or at least every other day. Keep it well above so you're not waiting to harvest for fuel. This here is your temp gauge. Ideally, it's going to run while you're harvesting between 3 and 4 bars. As long as it's not getting into the red, you're okay. If it's starting to rise, you probably have an issue with the radiator. My first thing would be to look and make sure that that radiator screen is still turning and that it's not all plugged, like the belt broke, or that it's plugged. So just keep an eye on that. This here tells you your miles per hour, and then these two are whatever you select, and you can press the soft key, which changes the position of this little arrow. And when that arrow is sitting here, then I can adjust. This is my back shaft speed for like a corn head. This here is the concave clearance number, reference number. This is the rotor speed number, and then this is the fan speed, and then engine RPM. And then if you want to change the bottom, change the arrow, and then again select whichever you want to be displayed. These three here, this I means that there's some service item that needs to be done, or the machine has thrown some electronic code that the computer needs to be looked at. It's not a big deal at all. I would not worry about it if it goes on and the rest of the machine works. The caution sign lets you know of something that's a little bit more serious. Again, take a look. Usually when this lights up, this screen is going to say something to 2630 or the command center. Again, take a look at the owner's manual and make your best judgment. If the red stop comes on, obviously it's self-explanatory. It's very serious. Shut down the machine and stop harvesting immediately. This up here is all your light controls. This first dims. At nighttime, it will dim your screens. All these screens sync with each other, and so you can dim them brighter or dimmer. This here is your flasher, halfway. detents just your cherries or your flashers on the side, all the way puts on the 4-way flashers, the hazards on the machine, the head, and your cherries. This here puts on the lights, so you have headlights as well. These two you can turn on at night, and they turn on all your harvest lights, your lights on the head, in front and behind. So when you're harvesting at night, you'll throw both of these on. When you're going down the road, you throw both of those on. And that flashes. And then this obviously is your windshield wiper. This is a 2630 Greenstar. It's a touch screen. And you come up to this is the main menu, and you're at a new family farm, and you're ready to start harvesting. You need to set up everything so it records and all the settings are correct in the machine. So the rotor speed and the concave setting and all these kinds of things are set up right. So the first thing you want to do is go to GS3, Greenstar 3rd edition. We want to have resources selected. We want to have a machine, the implement, the documentation, and the guidance. Boundaries isn't something that we use. Hit accept. Then it comes up with Client Farm Rescue, and these are not important because most of the time you're not going to be saving this data. It's just to be a aid and to tell the combine how to configure itself. So having Farm Rescue in here and the field number and harvest season really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. You can fill them out if you want, but as long as you're not going to be keeping this information for the farmer, it doesn't really matter. Then you see here 1 of 7. You hit the next key. Now here, this is a combine, and the machine number is entered in here already. The machine name, the turning radius already should be entered, and the sensitivity, that all should be in there. So generally, the John Deere dealer, the fine people at RDO are going to have all this set up for us. It should be ready to go. So you can breeze right through 2 of 7 and hit the next one. Implement model. You can make it a 635F. That's what this is, a 635 flex head. Implement name, you don't have to, again, the same 635F is fine. Either way, it'll work. Everything should be set in here. The physical width is 30 feet. The implement width 34. All this should also be set up. Right, now we're going to go to 4 of 7. Going to go up here, we're in soybeans. Let's say we're going to be harvesting some wheat. So we're going to hit change harvest settings. Click up here, toggle down, and let's say it's red hard winter wheat. The brand does not have to be filled in, but you'll notice there's an asterisk here for crop type and there's an asterisk for variety. You have to have something in here. Just select new, put number 1 in, whatever else you want to name it, and hit accept. Now that you have the asterisks here and here filled in, these rests do not matter. But if they have an asterisk, they have to be filled in before it'll let you hit accept and take you to the next screen. Again, residue management doesn't need to be filled in. Anything's good. Hit the next arrow, 5 of 7. This is your tracking mode. Generally, you're going to be using straight track, but if you do need to change it to adaptive curves or anything, you just select it, and then you can move down to adaptive curves. To move back, select it on here and hit straight track. Now we'll next move to implement guidance because we're just a combine, has no bearing on what we're doing. It's for a light bar setting. This is how many your shifts are, and when you hit the shift button, that will move the entire machine over on the GPS by 2 inches or 12 inches. And to change how much you want it, just touch the screen, and let's say we want 3 inch. Just hit 3.0 and accept. Now it's a 3-inch shift, and all that does is change when you're in the field and let's say the satellite drift and you've come back after dinner and you notice you're leaving a little bit of a skip, or it's 2 days later after a rainstorm and you're not quite on because it's not dead on perfect, SF1 and 2, sometimes you have to do a little bit of a shift to compensate to stay on the same line because of the drift of the satellites. You can also use it to adjust for point rows and various other stuff. I'll hit 7 of 7. Now this here, there's existing coverage for this map and field. You can either continue with the existing coverage or clear the coverage and continue on clear the coverage for the current field. If you continue with coverage, anything that you did before the rainstorm or before you shut the machine off will be there. In other words, the light blue and the dark blue where you've been will be documented. If you hit clear current field, it's going to act as if you're in a brand new field. So when you get to a new place, you're obviously going to clear current field coverage because you're at a new client. But if you're working in the same field after some time of being out of the machine, then you're going to want to continue with coverage. For our example, we'll clear the field coverage. Now here you can see this is our guidance system. Each one of these lines is what's going to take the combine and drive it auto steer on those lines. And when you shift, you'll notice those lines move over. And they keep moving to the right, just a little bit at a time. If I want it to be right where I'm at, I like where I'm at, I want that to be my line, I hit the center key and it automatically puts me right on the line. Now if I want to adjust, let's say I don't want to be headed in, and let's say I'm at a 90-degree angle and I want to be at a 180 or a 0-degree angle, I can set my track by selecting here. Then I can go in and select New. And I always name them whatever heading I'm going. So let's say instead of a 90, I want 180. Hit accept. A plus heading, we always use A plus heading. So you never change it on anything else, A plus heading. Then you go over here, and this should be standard. It should be the 34 feet. That's how wide the head is, to leave you 6 inches on each side to have leeway. And then your desired heading. You can hit set point A. That sets exactly where the machine is. That is its starting point. And then your desired heading. Come in, and this is where you enter if it's 90 degrees or 180 degrees. Or variants of thereof. So I want 180, I select 180 and accept. Then I hit accept, and you're about to overwrite the current track. You hit continue accept, and see now how it shifted from going at 180 or to 90 to now 180 degrees. So now you changed your whole position of the angle. If you want a bit broader view of the field where you're at, you toggle out, and that brings you out, and then you can also zoom in. 7 of 7. Once you hit the enter key, you are now complete. You can hit accept. Now everything's in and set up, ready to go. Now you can go ahead and hit the home screen, and you should be in harvesting. It just switched over to wheat. And then this tells you how many acres. This tells me how many hours you've been at it. This here tells you your dry bushels an acre, your average bushels an acre, your average acres an hour, your average moisture. This is your current moisture, and your acres covered total. Here's your wet bushels an acre, and your average wet, and then your total pounds wet. You notice here you hit these toggle switches. It's one of 3. You can toggle through 3 different home screens, and you can obviously get into layout setup and layout manager and change what you want to have and get into all that. But for our viewing here, 2 of 3, and you just keep toggling through. This here tells you how many miles an hour, your engine RPM, your gallons an hour, how many gallons an acre you're burning, how many feet you've traveled since you reset it. This here tells you your alternator voltage on the battery, your acres an hour, and you can adjust each one of these however you want it set up, whichever you want. When the Green Star, the 2600, 2630, and the combine are all working in combination as should, this here recording will light up red, and that should take place when you hit on the command arm here on the hydrostatic control. You hit number 3, the head will automatically drop to the detent 3rd position, and it will automatically then start recording, and it'll be indicated by this red dot, and this will flash. See how the red dot is flashing? Now it's recording, and now it stopped recording. It is also signified by the beeping. On the command center, this is how you adjust. Each one of these numbers represents the chafer, the sieve, the fan speed, and the concave number, the clearance in between, and the speed of the rotor. This also here indicates the hours on the machine itself, as in harvesting hours. So the separator, as they call them, the separator hours would be 449. The total engine hours on this machine is 641. This is the time, and this is whether it's recording or not. This light will light up and flash the same as this on the 2630. So you can just look down here and see. These here settings can be adjusted if you don't like how the grain's showing up in the tank, if it's a little too dirty, or your loss monitors are a little bit higher than you'd like and you'd like to get a little more speed out of it. You can adjust each of these from their automatic. The computer automatically will adjust off of your chart, and it will automatically meet the middle range of any of these numbers for your particular crop. But to fine tune it, you come over here and select combine setup. And then it'll come to default. You use this toggle switch to go through, and you can see how the green moves around. Whatever is highlighted in green is what you can select with the check mark to default. Then you can go to new, and now you can toggle through any one of these settings. This here is your rotor speed or threshing speed. This here is your clearance between the rotor and the concave. This is your fan speed. Your sieve is the bottom, the chafer is the top, and then you can go through and adjust infinitely any one of these. And as soon as it's highlighted, you can turn the dial-o-matic and automatically dial in whatever speed you want to fine-tune the machine to what you're seeing in the tank versus what you're seeing on the ground behind the machine. So you can go through and adjust any one of these in that fashion. The rest of these keys on the command center, this here basically shows you the exact same stuff that's up in the 2630 and on the other screen. This here tells you again the same things you're going to find here. It's just displayed in two different places. This here is your seed size. This is how sensitive the loss monitor is on the side post monitor. And the seed size depends on what you're harvesting. And again, you can look up in this guide. It gives you a reference and your owner's manual on what the seed size is. Obviously, corn, soybeans are going to be up here in this. And again, you can select it, hit the check mark key, and then you can see how the graph is moving over to the right and your seed size number is getting larger. So corn and soybeans, you're going to want to run all the way into the right, all the way at 90, the max setting. If it's real small beans, real dry, or really small kernels, you could back it up a little bit. But then as you're getting to your smaller crops like wheat, you know, are going to be in more of this range here in the middle. And then if you get obviously into canola, you're going to be way down here in the minimum levels because the seed size is so small. And all that is determining is how sensitive these monitors are going to be by how sensitive they are to an electric pulse being indicated on those sensors in the back of the machine in their various locations. As you toggle through combine setup 3 of 4, the machine is so smart it knows that the HydroFlex platform is attached. It knows that this head has 206 hours. This here is your minimum reel speed. Again, you can adjust any of that by selecting it, and then you can adjust what's your minimum speed, and that is the minimum when you're stopped that it's going to turn. So it's going to continue to be a ratio once you're moving, but when you're stopped, it's going to set at this minimum. Then again, your width. You can adjust your width. It should automatically, but if for some reason it's not correct, you can adjust how wide it is. Then here, this is your record stop height. This is very important. When you hit the default on your hydrostatic hand control, number 1, at a certain level, the recording is going to shut off, and that is pertinent for obviously your bushels an acre and how many acres you've covered for the farmer. So it doesn't change how the combine's set, but it just changes the recording that's going on both the command center and the 2630. So you can adjust that, and when you're ready, if you want that where the head is at this moment, you select the check mark, and now at 70% it shuts off. Or I should say at 71% it shuts off, and at 70% on the downtrend it turns on. And it'll also be signified in your ear by a beep letting you know that the recording's on, and it'll come up here in this dot or in the right hand corner of this here on the record. So this is how you adjust your height for recording. 4 of 4 has to do with your moisture and your units. It tells you a rate sample. This is 4 samples in a minute. That's the most you can have. If you want to do less rate, less samples in a minute, select it, adjust however many you want. The moisture alarm on or off, and then you can set your minimums and your maximums. And again, you can toggle through them and adjust. So if a farmer's putting it in the bin, for example, and he doesn't want to put anything in the bin that's over 15% for corn or 16%, then you would select that, and then it audibly comes on and this screen comes up, moisture too high, and that lets you know, so you can tell him, hey, you know, it's starting to get a little bit higher, if he wants to put air on it or bring it to town or make a change. The moisture correction, if you have a sample, if you have a tester, the farmer has a tester, or you've taken some of the grain into town and you know that it's testing a little bit too high or a little bit too low, you can correct by doing this. And then here you can come down, and obviously we do everything in the US in bushels, and you can adjust, you know, the setting there, but bushels, and just make sure it's in bushels. This here is your diagnostics and calibration. No active alarms, that is a good sign. 2 of 4 takes you to calibrations. You take this dial down 1. This is your feeder house speed. Your feeder house tilt, header, moisture, service hours, shoe chafer position, shoe sieve, threshing clearance, and yield. When you first mount into a head and you're ready to start harvesting, the first thing you want to do, the first time the combine actually comes in contact with the head, everything's hooked up, your hydraulic and electrical lines and your universal joints, everything's ready to go. We're in calibrations. We want to take this first one, we want to select feeder house speed, hit the check mark, hit the engine here, or hit the next save enter button. Engine must be running at high idle. Lower feeder house all the way down on the ground. And as you notice, right now it's going very slow, even though I have the button all the way down. It's running its diagnostics tests. Once it's completely done, toggle over here with the dial, hit next, press raise switch. Notice I'm holding the button, but it's stopped. It's now checking sensors. Now it's starting to raise up again, even though I've done nothing different with the button. It's all the way up. Toggle over. Oh, okay, whoops, never mind. All right, sorry. Press and hold header lower switch. So now I'm holding it. It's not doing anything, but I'm doing what it's telling me to. I'm holding it down. Notice it started to move. Now it goes really fast and it stops. Calibration complete. It wants to know how heavy the head is and what kind of head it's got on it. That is what it's trying to analyze. And we want to go and select the feeder house tilt and then header. So we want to do these 3 every time you hook up to a new head, and anytime you're going from one head to another, you want to go through each of these 3, and you just select it and then just walk yourself through it. Do exactly what it tells you to do, and it'll walk you right through the process. Just keep watching the command center.